So again, just copy and paste the contents of the Chapter 5 tutorial. And looks like Canvas is not being cooperative with me today. That's okay. So copy and paste it. You can just go to Notepad if you'd like. Just open up a Notepad and just paste it in there, just so you have it somewhere else. All right, then open up PGAdmin. Is anyone having trouble opening PGAdmin on their computer? Like I say, you might have to look on with someone. That's okay. So once you get PGAdmin open, what you're going to want to do is you're just going to want to make sure that you've entered in your password that you used. Okay, so I'm going to put mine in. And then once you've entered it, just expand out the servers. You will probably only have PostgreSQL 14. Okay, so just going to want to double click on that. Okay, it's going to ask you for your password again. Just enter it. Okay, now from here, we have databases, login / group roles, and table spaces. Just right click on databases and go to create database. Just enter a name. So in my case, I'm going to call this is 223 section 2, right? Okay, so I'm just going to call this class 223 2. Okay, we don't need to do anything else here. We can just hit save. Okay, so now we can come down here to schemas. Does everyone see that? There's a couple things we could do here. We have a public default schema. If we wanted to, we could do everything inside of that. Okay, but that's not what we're going to do. All right, so instead, what we're going to do is we're just going to right-click, create schema. Does everyone see this? Right-click on schema, create, and then schema. Okay, so then you're just going to call this something. So we'll call this class 1. Okay, hit save. And now we can right-click on class 1, and we can open up the query tool. Okay, so this is where we want to be, is right here. All right, and we can just paste in what we've already done. And I'm going to pause and make sure everyone's to this point. Is anyone not to this point? What point are you to? Okay. Yeah, so you're just going to want to catch up in that case. Anyone else having issues? Yeah. Okay. So you've created the schema, so right-click on it. Let me mute myself real fast. So I'll be posting the recording after class at some point, probably during office hours. So feel free to follow along whenever you can. Also, I recommend that you take notes if you're not following along. That's an important thing, so make sure you're taking notes. So, everyone able to get the query editor and paste in what we have? Okay, so just go ahead and remove the doc viewer stuff. Also, there's going to be a comment. So the comment is currently denoted with a hashtag. Just hit backspace on that and replace it with 2 dashes. See how that changes color? Okay, so now that's not going to be run. Okay, did everyone see that? So just do that on all of it where it says import. Just replace the hashtag with 2 dashes. okay? And get rid of this annotations at the bottom. That's just where we copied and pasted into Canvas. All right. So, like we say, we have 4 tables we're creating here. I'm going to go through them. You can tell that for all the SQL functions and any SQL words, we're using all uppercase. Okay, so we're starting off, we're creating the table person. We're opening up parentheses, and then from here we're putting in all the columns we're going to have. So we have our first column, which we're saying is ID number, and we're saying it's a big int, and it's not null. Okay, that means it's going to be a numeric value without a decimal place, right? What's it called again? What's the name of the column going to be? ID number. Okay, so then you separate out each of your columns with a comma, and you have the column name, the data type, and then any other modifiers you may have. So the not null modifier that I'm using here is saying that it cannot be a missing value. Okay, so we have to have an ID number and we have to have a first name according to this. Do we have to have a last name? According to this, we do not, because we don't have not null. Okay, so just a quick refresh. Okay, when we have varchar, all right, it's a variable length character, and we specify the maximum length inside of the parentheses for it. So in this case, I'm using 15. That means that the most that a name can be is 15 characters. Now, if a name is longer than 15 characters, we store the first 15 characters of the name, right? Okay, that's what this varchar 15 means. Okay, so one other thing before we create the table, I'm going to change this state. See how this is purple? Does everyone see that? Okay, that's a reserved word. So I'm going to change it to state ab for state abbreviation. And then it's still going to be the data type char2. All right. So that's all we're doing there. We're just specifying the column names as well as their data types. Okay, so we come down here to the bottom. Okay, we define the primary key by just saying primary key, opening up parentheses, saying what the primary key is. In this context, which of these columns is the primary key? Okay, ID number. All right, so we specify that inside of the parentheses for primary key. Now, then we have to close the parentheses because if you remember, we open up a parentheses to define the table. So then at the end of that, after we specified the primary key, we close the parentheses. Okay, we end it with a semicolon. So let's just go ahead and create this table. All right, so just make sure that you select from the bottom all the way up to the top and just hit the execute button. Okay, so now we've successfully created the table. Now let's say I want to make sure that I have the table. All right, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to use select star from, and then we create the person table. So we're just going to select everything from person. Now, so far, what should we have inside the person table? Okay, so what should be contained within the person table right now? So it's just going to be the columns without anything in the columns, correct? Because we haven't inserted anything into it yet. So we're going to come back to that in a minute. Let's go through the other tables. So just like before, start off with create, say what we're creating. In this case, we're creating a table. Say the table name, which is course. Open up a parentheses, and then we have all of our columns. So the first column is going to be the course number. That's going to be a big int, and it's not going to be null. Second is going to be course subject, which is going to be a varchar 20, which means it's a variable character with a max length of 20. And it's also not going to be null. Okay, then after that, we have the credit column, which is going to be a small int. And we have the course name, which we're specifying as a varchar with a max length of 99. Okay, so then finally we get down to primary key, and in this case we're using 2 columns as a primary key. That's which type of primary key? Okay, so that's going to be a composite primary key. Why? 2 or more columns. Okay. So again, if we wanted to do a composite key inside of SQL, all we do is just like before, say primary, and then say key, type in column 1, whatever the first column of it is, and then column 2. Okay, that's all we're doing. Yeah. Okay, so all you're doing there is we're just making sure we created the table successfully. So I'm just going to say select, and I'm going to use the asterisk symbol, which is called star, and then I'm going to say from, and which table are we verifying we created? So that's not the table though. We're verifying we created the first table, which was what? Person. Okay, so that's all you're doing there. Does that make sense? Yeah. So import people with the 2 dashes. See how that's orange? This won't do anything if we run it. It's just a comment. Okay? So we can run this and it won't do anything because it's literally just a comment. So we can select just this line right here. And it's going to run selecting everything. By the way, we haven't put any data into the person table yet. Okay, but we could also select it like this and select the comment. It's going to do the exact same thing because it doesn't do anything with the comment. Any other questions? All right. So we've talked about course. Let's go ahead and create it. So just go ahead and highlight from the beginning to the end. And of course, the end is denoted with a semicolon, right? Highlight all that, click run, and we've created the table. Now, let's say I want to double check that I made the table. What am I going to type? Exactly right. Okay, and look at this. We did in fact create the course table. And you'll also notice that both course num and course subject are acting as the primary key. Is that getting kind of cool? Okay. It's getting cool. It's not quite too cool for school, though. All right. Josh. Yeah, I mean, you don't have to. It's just best practice to have everything like that be in capitals. Exactly. Yeah, in general, SQL's not case sensitive to most things. That's a generalization. There are some things it is. But it's best practice to have it all be capitalized. Any other questions? Yeah, Ali. Okay, what are you executing? Okay, have you created the course table? So just go ahead and just select create table course all the way down to the semicolon. So like I do up here. And just hit play. So it's just going to be the execute. And then once you've done that, then try it again and see if that works. Yeah, Kaylin. So that's a good question. You can't create two tables with the same name. So if I try to create this table, I've already created the table. It's going to give me an error because it already exists. But if I wanted to run a select statement, I can sit here and I can press this button 1,000 times. Okay, it's going to keep running. I'm not sure what you mean by mess with your program. This is not creating a table. This is just selecting what's inside the table. So you can't really create two tables with the same name. You can create tables with similar name, but not the same name. Any other questions? All right, so far, have I lost anyone? Everyone understanding at least the basics of creating tables? Okay, so now we're creating the section table. All right, so you can see, just like before, create table. Table name is section. Open up a parentheses, all the different columns, followed by their data types, and then any other modifications we're applying. Now in this case, pretty much all of them have a not null. Okay, what does that mean? Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So we cannot have a missing value for any of these columns. And that makes a lot of sense because if you're registering for a section, it's not like you can't have a course time. It's not like you can't have a location. Even online courses will still say what the time they're offered is. Okay? So that's what we're doing here. Now, which of these columns is the primary key? Josh. Okay? And you got that because primary key down here is defined as CRN, right? All right? So then we close off the parentheses, and we end with our good friend, the semicolon. Course registration number. It's common at large universities because they might have, 10,000 courses offered a semester, for instance. So just hit execute once you've highlighted all that. Okay, and we in fact created the table. Okay, in the last table, we're just creating it the same exact way. Okay, so we're saying create table, table name, which is registration, opening up parentheses, all the different columns. Now it's important we do this one last, and I'll talk about why. But this is which type, if we had this on an ERD, what type of entity would this be? Okay, so the type of entity it would be, let's play Hangman. You guys like Hangman? This marker is the worst. Appreciate it. Are these your markers or are they? Don't forget them if they're yours. Okay, so yeah. Okay, associative entity is correct. All right. Well, that's okay. We didn't get hung. All right, that's always a good thing. So that's an associative entity between person and section. Does everyone understand that? Okay. And these constraints down here are foreign keys. So that means that neither CRN nor ID number originate inside the registration table. Okay, so the primary key is what type of primary key? Okay, so that's what it's comprised of, but what type does that make it? It's a composite key, exactly right. It's composed of two or more columns. All right, so then we're creating the constraints. And this is a little bit tricky. I'm not going to lie to you. Okay, so what you do is you say constraint, and then you name the constraint something. So I just called it student exist for ID number to make sure it has a legitimate ID number. And then I also called it course exist to make sure the course exists. Okay, then you say foreign key. All right. And then, of course, you specify what the foreign key is, and you say where it's coming from. So you say references, table name, open parentheses, column name, close parentheses, and that's what you're doing. Does that make sense? So it's a little bit trickier than anything else in SQL, at least up to this point. All right, any questions about it? Does everyone understand it? All right, let's grade it. So just highlight it and then execute it just like before. And now we have all of our tables created. Now based off of this, okay, we know that we cannot just go ahead and start inserting stuff into registration. Okay, the reason for that is that we have to have these constraints existing inside of person and section. So let's come up here to person. And let's see how we would actually insert data. So just start a new line, just hit enter a couple times. I like to skip lines in between stuff. You can do whatever you want though. So to insert data into an existing table, we're going to say insert into. So it's just going to be insert into. And then the table name. So in this case, we're inserting into person. Okay, then we open up a parentheses, and this is the fun part. Okay, by fun part, it's not actually that fun. You type in all the column names. Okay, and then you say values. And then you insert the actual value for column 1. So I'm going to say value 1, value 2, and so on. All right. And if you want to, you can put a comma here, and you can insert a new row. Okay? So you can keep doing that all day, basically. Let's see what it actually looks like. Okay, so I'm just going to say insert into, and we know we want to go into the person table, right? So we can say insert into person. Now here's the fun part. Again, what we're doing is we're specifying each and every single, we're specifying each and every column inside a person. Okay, so this is not going to be fun, is it? Okay, so what we're doing is we're starting at the top. We have ID now. Put a comma. Next we have F name. We have L name. We have SSN. We have phone. We have add line 1. Add line 2. Then we have city, state AB, and zip code, as well as person status. Okay? Everyone understand what I just did? So again, this is just a list of all the columns for person. So ID number, first name, last name, SSN, phone, add line 1, add line 2, city, state AB, zip code, and person status. So that just goes into here. Now we do close off the parentheses for the column definition. Just a reminder, each of the columns are separated by a comma. Okay, but we don't put a semicolon at the end quite yet. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to say values. Okay, and now this is where we're going to put in an ID number. We're going to put in a first name. We're going to put in a last name. Does that make sense? Let's do it. Okay, so for our ID number, we're going to use 1. So just type in a 1. Now because it's a numeric value, which is specified as big int, that means we don't have to put it inside of quotation marks, right? For everything else, we're going to use single quotes. So make sure it's single quotes and not double quotes. And I'm going to use my good friend Oscar. Okay. Last name, I'm just going to type in Grouch. Okay. Again, we know that SSN is a numeric field, correct? Do we put it in quotes or not? We do not. Okay, so that's Oscar's SSN. Coincidentally, it's also his phone number. Okay. So now we're on address line 1. Anyone remember where Oscar lived? I don't think it's 123 Sesame Street, but I'm going to use it anyway. Now we have to put in an add line 2 because it's specified in here. So I'm just going to put trash can. Okay. Know that he's in NYC, I think at least. State is going to be New York. We're just going to use 12345 as the zip code. And we'll say Oscar is a student. All right. Does everyone to this point? We're saying insert into, we're saying the table name, then we're specifying the columns we're going to be inserting in the particular order. And then we're saying values, opening up parentheses, and then ID number, be 1, first name, Oscar, last name, Grouch, SSN, this number, phone, this number, address line 1, this thing, address line 2, we said it's trash can. Then we said city, we said New York City. State abbreviation, we said New York. Zip code, we said 12345. And finally, person status, we said student. All right. Now, personally, I think having one person inside of here is going to be fine. All right. We're going to do more of other stuff, but for now, I think person's okay just to do one. So how do we end this? Semicolon. So you want to make sure you're putting it at the end of the values, not the end of the insert into. Because this is one line of code. All right. So grab from the semicolon to insert. Just grab that entire thing and hit play. Now, you'll see that that returns successfully. So, if you got an error message, it probably says something like, there's not the correct number of columns. Something to that effect. If you got that, make sure that you verify that you have the correct number of commas. So for instance, if I accidentally put a comma inside of one of the quotation marks here, it would not count as a comma. Does that make sense? So you want to just double check that if you did get that error message. So I want to make sure that I put that in the person table. What am I going to do? Select star from person. Okay, and look at that. We did in fact put Oscar the Grouch inside of here. Is that kind of cool? Okay, maybe a little bit cool. So let's do the same thing for our other tables. Yeah. That's a great question. We would put it at the very last value that we're adding. We're actually going to do that right now. Okay. So we're going to do insert into course. And now here, we have a lot fewer columns. Okay, so this is going to be a lot easier to do, right? So we say course num, we say course subject, say course name. Oops, I forgot credit, didn't I? Credit, course name. Okay, so now we hit enter and we say values. And we're going to just throw in some random courses here. All right, I'm going to make them up. So I'm going to say 1, 2, 3. I'm going to say course subject, we'll just say math. I'm going to say credit, we'll do 3. And course name, call it Intro to Math. Okay, is everyone to this point? So if we wanted to just insert one single thing, we could put a semicolon here and run it. But what's the fun in that? All right, so what we're going to do instead, after the end of the parentheses, so after the parentheses, type a comma. Now we're going to open up another parentheses and do it again. Okay? So I'm going to say course num is going to be 1. Course subject, we'll just say math again, keep it easy. Credit is 1, and course name, math exploration or something, I don't care. Okay, and we can do this again. So I just open up another comma after the parentheses, and we're just going to do one more. So we'll do 3, 3, 3. We'll say it's another math course. We will say it is going to be 3 credit hours, and we'll call it calculus. Whoops, I used the wrong type of, want to make sure you're using single quotes. Okay, so now at the end of this, I'm going to use a semicolon, and then from here, I'm just going to insert this in. Okay. Does everyone understand what I did? So again, I'm just making sure I'm matching up everything, and then once I've gotten a single row, use a comma, and then open up another parentheses, and so on. Any questions? Yeah. What do you mean pull up when you scan your Sky card? It'd probably be similar. I mean, they're definitely using a SQL database for that stuff, if that's what you're asking. So again, they would probably have on the back end, they would probably have insert into whatever table that's stored in. You talking like for attendance scanner stuff? Yeah, so this is the same sort of stuff. And this would be an example of like a student record database, okay? Because it's comprised of tables that identify students. All right, so when we insert that in, we can tell that we successfully inserted it because when we run select everything from course, look at what we get. We get back everything that we inserted. Okay, so it's getting kind of cooler, maybe a little. Okay, so let's go a little bit quicker on section. So I'm just going to say insert into section. Now we have CRN. We have course num. We have course subject. Instructor, semester, section year. Boy, there's a lot of columns here, aren't there? Let's be lazy. Let's just insert CRN. Oh wait, it's all not null, isn't it? Okay. Well, let's just see what happens. All right, it's not going to allow us to, of course, but just to demonstrate that. Okay, so of course, because we have stuff not null, what it's saying is that the first value is there for CRN, but everything else that's null, we cannot have it be null. So how can we fix this? Okay, how do we remove a table? Okay, so we're going to use drop table section. Now, I don't think this is going to allow us to do it, and we're going to see why in just a second. Okay, so because the registration table is referencing the section table, we have to drop registration first. So let's drop registration. Now that we've dropped registration, now we can drop section. Okay, so now what we can do to be lazy is we can just remove all these not null from everything except CRN, right? Let's do that. So again, I'm just removing not null from every column except for CRN. And what this will allow us to do is to basically not have to type in all this stuff. So again, once you've done that, you've dropped both registration and section. Then you're just going to want to highlight everything once you've removed the not null from everything but CRN. Just highlight it and then execute it. Okay, so now we can just get rid of this drop table if we want. We can come down here to insert into section, and we're just going to get the CRN. So now we're just going to go ahead and insert in some different CRNs. Okay. So I'm just going to verify that I did in fact insert those correctly. So I'm just going to select star from section. Okay, and look at that. We certainly did. Okay, so we inserted data into just the CRN column. Does everyone understand how I was able to do that? Okay. Is it a little bit sneaky what I did? Might be. But it works, does it not? All right, so the last thing we're going to do, this is going to be a lot quicker. We're just going to insert the registration. So we're just going to come down here, say insert into registration. And we're going to say CRN, comma, ID no. Hit enter again, say values. And now we're only going to be inserting a CRN, which we have 1, 2, 3, and 4. And we only have one ID number. Okay, so what is Oscar's ID number? It's number 1. So we're going to say 1, comma 1. Then we're going to say 2, comma 1. 3, comma 1. And finally 4, comma 1. Put a semicolon at the end. That's going to register Oscar for all the classes. I forgot to recreate the registration table after I dropped it. Okay, so that's what the error message is. So make sure you recreate the table. And now just run that. Okay, so just to verify, we're going to say select star from registration. Okay, Okay, and we have everything there. So that's about all the time we have today. Next class, we're going to pick up with doing some aggregate function stuff, and then the class after that, we're going to do joins. So make sure you don't miss those. If you do miss them, make sure that you follow along in the video. Hope you all have a great weekend. See you all Monday. I'm going to hang out. I also have office hours from 11:10 to 12:20, so make sure you stop by those if you need to. Yeah, you can just save it if you'd like. You can just hit the save, and it'll tell you where to save it. So you'll just kind of put in wherever. Alternatively, though, we're going to come in and we're going to do a different table for Monday anyway, so you don't have to save it either. It's really up to you.